Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Energy and Utilities podcast. Here is your quick news roundup of the stories in energy that grabbed my attention. The first one is a big one, in my opinion. It is Centrica, whose 33-year reign in the ftse 100 has come to an end, and it's been now confirmed that it's been demoted to the ftse 250. And so what's interesting for me, I'm a former employee of Centrica or British Gas. And when I worked there in 2012, 2013, roughly, that was the height of its share price, which was 400 pence or £4. It's dropped significantly, and the total business is now valued at £2.3 billion. And according to the ftse guidelines, its market capitalisation is now falls outside of the ftse 100 share index, meaning it's been demoted to the ftse 250. There's a number of reasons for this. It tried to sell off some assets, which it couldn't do due to COVID-19. Obviously, there's, I believe it's COVID-19, but anyway, the sale didn't go through. The other piece is due to COVID-19, energy demand has dropped significantly, and there's been a large decrease in crude oil prices, and they've had the chief exec step down as well in March after 5 years leading the group. So all of that combined means that Centrica is now not part of the ftse 100. What for me is sort of the big story here is more so that Centrica, in all its various guises, has been part of the ftse 100 for the last 33 years. And to me, this possibly could signal the sort of beginning of the energy transitions, where those with large fossil fuel infrastructures are starting to lose revenue. Obviously, as mentioned, there's a lot of mitigating circumstances here, and I presume that Centrica will be back in the ftse 100 at some time when their market cap increases. But it does sort of provide for me a bigger view of saying, well, actually, this is what the energy transition looks like, and if you are, and if you're not sort of diversifying, fast enough away from fossil fuels, that's possibly what could happen to your business. So it's a very interesting dynamic. I think a lot of it is mitigated by sort of current circumstances, but it's an interesting one. And particularly, it's not just dropping out of the ftse 100; it's everything combined. The massive drop in share price, etc. So it will be interesting to see if Centrica comes back in and what the future plans are for Centrica and British Gas. But very much one of close interest for me, and a fascinating story. The second one really is, I suppose, could this be classed as a bailout? I don't know if it's a bailout, but basically Ofgem unveils £350 million scheme to support struggling energy suppliers. And so Ofgem unveiled today a £350 million scheme to support struggling energy suppliers which do not possess an investment-grade credit rating. And it states, as a result of the coronavirus, many households have defaulted on the payment of energy bills, which has heaped pressure on electricity and gas suppliers. So City AM covers this story. And I think it's interesting. It basically states that those firms eligible for the programme will be able to defer payments to the operators of the UK electricity, gas and networks until March 2021. And such costs usually make up 20% of a consumer's bill. The interesting side note is any deferred payment will accrue interest at the default industry rate, which currently stands at 8%. So it's not an interest-free loan. It's very much a sort of deferment. And one other side note is one of the conditions of the support is that suppliers must certify that they will not pay executive bonuses or dividends until the money is repaid. So I think that's a very good sort of clause there. It's a very interesting one to put in there, and it's very interesting to see that Ofgem has responded to the current COVID-19 situation, and it does demonstrate that COVID-19 is having a major impact on the energy sector. My worry actually is more looking ahead. For me, COVID-19 is very much at the beginning, and the impact will feel, COVID-19, hopefully we'll get over the worst of this from a societal point of view, but from a economic point of view, I think all the bad news is still to come. And so my worry is that we'll see more defaults for energy supplies, and that we see some real problem and consolidation of supplies later on in the year. So that's sort of my worry with this story. Again, that's why this story gathered my interest. And again, to highlight, the main condition that has been stipulated is that suppliers must certify that they will not pay executive bonuses or dividends until the money is repaid. So that's an interesting sort of clause there, and I think very much a welcome clause. And for me, it will be very interesting to see what the future holds for the energy sector in relation to COVID-19. And the third one is a story that sort of grabbed my attention. Is close to my heart. I'm a adopted Bristolian, I suppose you could say, and I'm also actually a customer of Bristol Energy. But unfortunately, Bristol City Council has agreed to sell Bristol Energy. It states, this comes from the BBC, and it states that a council-owned energy company which has posted losses of more than 30 million is to be sold. I feel a little bit sad about this, because I do think there is value in local energy companies and the sort of infrastructure they can provide, if I think in terms of social obligations like the energy company obligation, warm homes discount, and then some of the things that they could do with that money, and the idea that you have a local company that benefits local residents. The article goes on to state that the sale comes after a recommendation from accountancy firm Ernst & Young, which was commissioned to write a report about the energy company's finances. Obviously, a lot of challenges, and the Bristol Mayor, Mr. Rees, said the authority faced three choices for the company: to collapse it, to try and make it work, or to get to a position where the level of risk is reduced. To collapse it wouldn't have been an acceptable decision, he said. He states, hindsight is fantastic, but we've got a lot of people now criticising the energy company when at its launch they were its biggest champions. I'm disappointed it didn't work. Of course I am. Interesting note. I think he's got a very good point. It's got a lot of praise when they started it, and as he says, hindsight is a wonderful thing. I do think this needs to be applauded from a number of viewpoints. One, often we public sector gets accused of not being innovative enough, and I think this is an innovation, and I think it was a worthy risk to take. It's going to be interesting to see how much they're going to sell it for and how that works with the total losses of 30 million. But I still think it shows an entrepreneurial council, and I really think it should be applauded. Mr. Rees says he's disappointed, and I am disappointed as both a customer of Bristol Energy and of the model. And obviously, the interesting note here is that this comes on the back of another council-owned company in Nottingham, in Robin Hood Energy, having similar news. So yes, sad times for local authority led energy companies, but I still think it should be applauded, and I still think there is something in the local council model, but possibly setting an energy company up from scratch might be a step too far. I think all eyes will be on the local London company. I can't remember what the name of it is, but I think it's in partnership with Octopus. So all eyes will be on that, and it will be very interesting to see what comes out of the sale of Bristol Energy. And finally, I wanted to end on a good news story, which basically states that records are falling like dominoes. So Europe is delivering record renewable generation. So this story, which I can't seem to sort of access the link to, but this story is interesting. Basically comes from eddy.net, although I can't access it now, but it states that the records are falling like dominoes, and Europe is delivering record renewables generation. And I think the interesting piece about this is that data shows that across Europe, 55% of energy supply has come from renewables. Germany hit 58% and the UK hit 48% over the month of May, while Spain hit a record-breaking 74%. Now, obviously, a lot of this has to do and has to be put in the context of COVID-19 and the lockdown measures and the reduced demand on sort of wider energy consumption. But the other part for me is it's exciting to really realise that renewables have come on and that they are very much a viable part of the grid, and that we've hit these numbers even before the peak of summer, if you think about solar, etc. So records are falling. It will be interesting to see what the next few months hold, and seeing if we in the UK can climb over a 48% supply that came from renewables, and it'll be interesting to see what Spain will do with its current record of 74%, what it will do over the summer months. So that's sort of the roundup, if you like. There's no other stories at the moment that sort of grab my interest. I hope that was useful, but please do get in touch if you have any other thoughts, or if there's any major story that I've missed. And do let me know what you think. Do get in touch either via Twitter or LinkedIn. Thank you.